This is Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production, your daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball, featuring interviews with special guests. Now is here as your host, Mr. Steve Jones.
Hola, buenos dias.
¿Cómo está?
Great to see you.
Great to see you as well, sir. It's been a little bit.
Bilingual show.
Mm-hmm. Hey, if you want to talk in Hebrew, I can talk in Hebrew. Not well.
Shalom.
I can.
Can't we just exhausted everything I know?
There we go.
Hey, by the way, starting tomorrow, the Little League World Series will get underway in Williamsport. I talked with Steve Keener, the head of Little League, yesterday. It's an exciting year for them because Cuba is in for the first time. And they've been going, it's been a process to make this happen. But the Cuban Little League is really, there's a lot of excitement surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will be there. I'm trying to think. We're not so sure I have any games at Williamsport this year during the Little League World Series. I think it's
just outside the window.
Well, no, I do. I've got a game next Thursday up there.
Well, there you go then.
Because what happens is a lot of the Little League teams come over.
Mm-hmm. And come and watch.
And I remember the year the team from Uganda was there.
Oh, I remember that year.
And they went to the Spikes game with the Cutters. And when they walked in, everybody gave them a standing ovation. Now imagine how those kids felt.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be the same thing with Cuba. They love their baseball there so much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't just like baseball there. They love baseball there. And to have a team in the Little League World Series is captivating for them. And I asked Steve, I said, how many translators do you have? I said, there's a universal language of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, no. He says, we do have a couple on staff. He says, but it's amazing. He says, Cuba and the Australians had a joint practice.
Ooh.
And when it was over with, he says, I was looking out my office, and I'm watching the kids walk up the hill. And they weren't walking up separately as here comes the Australian team, here comes Team Cuba. He says they're all walking up, arms around their shoulders, talking, laughing about whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He says they overcome those barriers so easily. He says, but we do have translators and interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
He said what happens is they now use their phones.
Yeah. You can pull up Google Translate or something else and make it work.
Right, and you can make it work. He says, and that's how they're able to get it done. He says, but it's amazing how baseball is the universal language. The Phillies and the Nationals will play the game at Bowman. I think it's Sunday night this week.
Believe it's Sunday night. Yeah. You're correct.
I've seen the whole setup. I mean, when I was last week, they had most of it done. They set up outdoor clubhouses as tents. Now these aren't like the tents you get and you're tailgating at Beaver Stadium. This is like a tent.
Yeah, it's a real tent.
It's like with everything from air conditioning and everything that goes with it. The Nationals are actually the home team, not the Phillies, for the series, which is ironic because the Phillies used to have their farm team in Williamsport. Mm-hmm. So take Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott came up in Williamsport. And we've had Bryson on the show, as a matter of fact. And and they'll play this game. And Steve was telling me that even though Mike Trout was injured a couple of years ago, Mike Trout still made the trip.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Trout said, I want to do everything here. Well, Mike Trout was sitting on the bench with the players during a game. Mike Trout's going down on cardboard on the hill at the game, and of course Shohei Ohtani was there, and it was a terrific experience for them, and it's been like that for the major leaguers. It brings them back to their roots, where they remember playing whether it was a regional tournament or whether it happened to be, maybe one or two make it to the Little League World Series along the way. A couple have along the way.
I was going to say, I'm trying to remember players that have, I think, Todd Frazier.
Todd Frazier
did
from
real well.
Tom's River, New Jersey. Made it there. So they've had guys like that have done it, and so it's a whole big celebration of baseball. They work all year to get there. They now have a full complex with the two fields, Volunteer Stadium and Alameda Stadium. The irony is I have been there many times.
Mm-hmm.
I have never gone to a game there.
Really?
I haven't had
time.
It hasn't fit. I haven't had the time to do it. I remember one year they asked me to come up to be the featured speaker for the Little League umpires at a luncheon at Giannetti's downtown. And, I made the speech and I was done, but I had to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't go across the river to the game. So at some point, maybe it'll work out where I can just go over to a game just to go to it.
I would love to see one of these things.
Yeah, just to be a part of it. Now, on the 26th of August will be the U.S. Championship game.
Mm-hmm.
The national anthem singer will be Golden Israel Achumba of the Penn State football team.
Well, ain't that interesting?
Yep.
Nice little crossover there for you.
Yep. Now, Little League. Now, I've met a lot of Little League teams because they'll come down to practice.
Yeah, they come down and come by.
Right. Like the team from Hawaii that won it all came over. Hey, and you meet all the kids. The Pennsylvania team from Red Lion was there one day. They were kicking field goals.
Mm-hmm.
I told you the story about with Robbie Gold and Joe and the Mike Conforto and the team from Washington State. Like, okay, right? And Joe, hey kids, I say it was great.
By the way,
Mikey, you're a much better athlete than your dad.
By the way, out of the teams in the U.S. that are making it, Media Pennsylvania.
Media Pennsylvania is in. They made it. So, and there are 10 U.S. teams and there are 10 international teams.
Mm-hmm.
And look, this is completely different than the way it used to be. And I remember 8 teams, 4 international, 4 U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you've got 20, and I think that's representative of the game.
Yeah.
Internationally as to where it is right now. Now, for example, I think is there Team Europe?
There is, in terms of the teams that are here, you have Asia Pacific is Chinese Taipei, Australia, Canada, Caribbean with Curacao, Cuba, Europe, Africa is Czech Republic is the team that's going to be there, which is real fun. Japan, Latin America is Venezuela, Mexico, and then Panama as well. Those are the teams that you have centered coming here. So
it's interesting about the Czech Republic because usually the team from Europe is usually from a military base.
Mm-hmm.
It's American kids.
Germany, France are usually the teams that come.
Yeah. Now, the Spikes had a pitcher named Daniel Padasek, who pitched at Charleston Southern and is now committed to pitching at Georgia. He, in my opinion, to be honest with you, should have been drafted. He should have been drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it's more than the 20-round draft, he gets picked because he has something to him. He was really good at Charleston Southern. He was terrific here. He was the pitcher of the month in the MLB Draft League in June, and justifiably so. But he's from the Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in Prague. His parents are both attorneys. And he grew up loving, of course, hockey. Right? But then he started playing sandlot baseball and found that he enjoyed sandlot baseball. And then he got to the point where, okay, let's try and do some camps and things like that and find out how good he is. And he ended up coming over here. English, fluent, no issue. He'll go to Georgia. He'll pitch well down there in the Southeastern Conference in the upcoming year. Should have been drafted by the majors. Should have. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But But yeah, he's the one guy I know from the Czech Republic. And it's ironic they have a Little League team that is there. And who knows what kind of influence a guy like that has, even just going to college in the United States, that can have. There was a catcher, Nielsen, that was with the Brewers from Australia. He influenced an entire generation just by being on the Brewers. He wasn't the star of the team. He was a good player who started. Right? Well, he influenced a whole generation.
I believe you're looking for David Nielsen.
David Nielsen,
who was the current manager of the Australia national baseball team.
Yeah. I mean, he influenced an entire generation of players in Australia. Wow. I remember the Dodgers opened the season against, I think it was the Arizona Diamondbacks in Australia a few years ago. So it's great to see the depth which baseball is going to. And I will say this, for all the criticism of Rob Manfred, and let's give him a lot of credit. He's earned most of it. Okay. One area that he has really done a great job with is understanding the reach of baseball on different levels. So they do the game at Fort Bragg for the military. They do the game at Field of Dreams in Iowa. And then the biggest one of all has been their connection to Little League and the fact that they play this game every year. Now, Major League Baseball absolutely backslapped the city of Williamsport. Mm-hmm. Completely backslapped them. Okay? I realize the facility they've tried hard, but it's not great. I mean, it's the second oldest ballpark in use besides the one in Vermont. Right? And they've done certain things to make that ballpark better, like the party deck, things like that. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay? And the city owns the ballpark. Okay? I'm talking about where the Cutters play, not the Little League World Series. They own the ballpark. Okay, I'll get back to you on the rest of it. It's been a struggle, but Major League Baseball has backhanded that group.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by doing
big time.
This, okay, but when it comes to this game and committing a Major League Baseball game to go in conjunction with the Little League World Series, it was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
It was brilliant. I mean, the marketing is great, and I told Steve Keener this yesterday. Said of all the events that ESPN does during the course of the year, I said of which there are so many, in my personal opinion, this is the one where they absolutely excel at it.
I completely agree.
You watch how they broadcast those games. They broadcast those games with knowledge and a heart. Right? Okay? Those kids are out there. They treat 11 and 12-year-olds like they're big time, but they also treat them like they're 11 and 12. Right? Kid makes an error. Hey, stuff like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They really do a great job of pictures, spirit, and commentary that does the Little League World Series justice. And I give them everybody who's ever done this. I think it's Carl Ravage doing it again this time.
It's usually Ravage.
Carl does a great job with it.
Well, my favorite part of this, and this is a personal thing for me, is how they have kind of changed their tune towards it with, for me, the Kids Cast. That was a really big thing for me because the first Kids Cast they did was in 2021. That was the first group where they had young people, high schoolers, middle schoolers come up and do broadcasts for the games as if they're professionals. And they had MLB players would come into the booth and they'd interview them and talk to them a little bit. And they had Monet Davis there as well from one of the teams back a few years ago.
He's from Philadelphia. Yeah.
From Philadelphia. And one of the kids who did it is someone I'm friends with, Ian Nicholas. He was part of that first broadcast. And he talked about it, how they treated him like a professional. And that's really cool because so often, like, he's a high schooler. Mm-hmm. Like, he shouldn't, like, he understood, like, he's a high schooler. He's not going to be treated as if he's a Chris Berman or Carl Ravage even. Yeah. And he was like, no, they treated me like a professional. And that was really cool. And that all of the players wanted to come talk to him because he's talking about them. And he was like, yeah, I got some really cool things because those kids are here because they want to have fun. Yeah. This is a very fun thing. Yeah. I can remember listening to Good Time, Owl City's song that would play every time during the breaks going into these games for 4 or 5 straight years. And it's the most special time because these kids are just having fun. I mean, the Oklahoma-Louisiana game, I believe, that was played recently between those two teams to see who would get to go to like the final match in their group. They played, and one of the kids on Oklahoma was kind of showing off a little bit, hit a home run, did a bat flip and everything, got real excited. And then the next inning, Louisiana rattled off 7 runs against him, and they won. But after the game, they all hugged, and they were like, there's no bad blood here. And that's really fun to see because so often it's like, oh, if you do the showman thing, how dare you? Like, I'm going to like throw at you. No, it's meant to be fun. These kids are enjoying their time there because this is a once in a lifetime level thing where these kids are 12, 11, whatever, however old they are. How many times can you say you play on national TV as a 12-year-old?
I know.
And realistically, a lot of these kids probably aren't going to play beyond maybe high school or middle school. So this is one of those things that's just so cool.
Yeah, it is. And I also think that the managers come off really well in this. You know, they're mic'd up. And, you know, when they go out to talk to the kids or whatever, it's cool.
And I love hearing who's your idol, who's your baseball idol, because so often it changes. And that's really cool to see. I know in recent years it's been like Fernando Tatis Jr. has been a very big one for players. And like seeing these different names of people who are like, oh, I love this guy. I remember back, I think it was 2011, 2012, someone was like, Kevin Youkilis is my idol. And I was like, that's like a player you wouldn't expect to be the idol because everyone's like, oh, it's going to be the top 2 or 3 guys.
The Greek god of walks.
The Greek god of walks. But sometimes players have these really, like, I love watching this specific player. And I think that's really cool because it makes a connection.
But what does it tell you that when you see who's your favorite player, that some will say Shohei Ohtani, somebody will say Fernando Tatis, some will say Manny Machado, some will say Aaron Judge, some will say Mookie Betts. Well, they're kids. What does it tell you, those kids? Look at the diversity of their answers. Okay? Look at the diversity. Your favorite player is Mookie Betts. Why? Because they love Mookie Betts. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Right? I love Shohei Ohtani. Great. Okay, great. Right? Aaron Judge. Okay. Yeah, I got it. You know, David Bednar. Who? Just kidding.
But it's like hearing those names is one of those real cool things. And also, these kids are great.
I love Mike Trout.
Yeah. But these kids, great at talking to media. There is one clip that lives in infamy in terms of Little League World Series lore. Big Al, back I believe 2015 or 16, I forget what team he came from, but he was like, hey, I'm Big Al, and I hit dingers. And just how he said it and delivered it, he was so confident in it. And then he went and hit a home run in his game, I believe, and it was just like this really cool moment, this fun moment. And also, seeing the parents in the crowd. It's magical. You see these parents there and they're interviewing their kid during the game and they hit a home run and the parent freaks out. And it's like, this is what I want to see. This is what I love.
One of the players for Team Cuba, his father played on the Cuban national team for 17 years. Well, right now he's playing professionally in Japan and he can't go to the games. But Steve Keener was telling me he was speaking with him and he said, and everything I've ever done, he says, I've never been more nervous than watching my son play. But he'll be in Japan playing professionally. So, yeah. But that starts tomorrow.
Starts tomorrow, runs through the end of August. 27th, I believe, is the finals.
Yeah.
U.S. versus international. And that'll be...
So the U.S. championship game, Golden Israel Achumba will be singing the national anthem. So how about that?
So you're not going to sing it alongside him, Steve?
Okay, look, I already did this once this year. Okay. Okay. And the Paterno family run, the national anthem singer didn't show up. And James Franklin says, how about Steve sings it? I'm like, what are you? The object. What do you want? You want these people to start running now? It'll run away.
You'll give them a nice fast boost off the line.
So I gave it my best shot. It's not my strong suit, but I gave it my best shot. Then James leaned over to me. He goes, you're better than I thought you were going to be. I said,
there we go.
No, I said, James, that was terrible. What are you talking about? I pulled the old, okay, everybody, come on, let's do it together.
Smart, clever. But it starts, it's going to be fun. And it's the fact that it's happening an hour from here is just also a really cool thing.
If I can figure out a way to get up, even if it's for a couple innings, to go to a game, I just have never been able to go. I've always had shows that, the evening shows that went till 7 o'clock, or then I had shows that went to 5 o'clock. Or games or something like that. I just haven't been able to do it. And at some point, even if it's just for a couple innings, just to say I went, I want to go. Because I've been to the field.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to the field. There was nobody on it at the time when I went, and I've gone up there a couple times. So, oh well. Yeah.
It'll be cool.
Okay. So, James met with the media last night. The open practice took place on Sunday, which was, or no, I think it was Saturday. Saturday it took place. Sunday was an off day. So we're out there and they're warming up. James, I was talking to, they had Big Ten officials there. And you always want to take advantage of something when it's presented to you. So anytime Big Ten officials officiate a scrimmage, I like to pull the lead referee aside and say, hey, look, what are the points of emphasis? What should Jack and I be looking for? Things like that. So I'm talking to the referee in the end zone. James comes over. He goes, can you believe we got all these people here and we have a tornado watch? I said, I know. He says, can you believe this? So here we go. All the write-ups, and everybody did great jobs of, John Sauber and Audrey Snyder and Nate Bauer and T. Frank and Mark Brennan and on Mike Portman. Everybody did a great job of writing up the scrimmage and what they saw and their observations. So I don't really have to go through any of that because the writers have already done a great job of doing it. Everybody knows that the defense, quote, won the night on Saturday. The key is two things. Number one, the camp has been close and competitive in reality until you got to Saturday night. So I'll just pick an odd number because it's not always consistent, but you do a 15-play competitive period. Well, there have been, in a 15-play competitive period, there have been a lot of 8-7s. And it's not 8-7 the offense won, 8-7 the defense won. It's whatever, okay? And that's what you're hoping for, where each side is getting something out of it as the iron sharpens iron. That's what you're looking for. The key to Saturday night was obviously you saw what the defense can do. And the corners, by the way, Dixon, King, Miller, Hardy, even the young kids. But the experienced players, you know what they have? Patience and poise at corner. It's not a handsy group. You watch how they play it. Patience, poise. And that's what they have at the corner position there. And the pass rusher was really good. Now, did Olu participate? No. Wallace was in some. They rotated some things through. Okay, which is fine because you have to get a lot of people experience. But the key is it's like when you lose a game. Don't have such a hangover from losing the game that you then lose the next game. You can't let a team beat you twice. Well, for the offense, you can't let a practice beat you twice. And they didn't. See, that's the key. The key is they came out and got back to work, and and that's why when James met with the media last night, he had a pretty upbeat feel about what he saw in that practice field that night. That was the tone, because the offense, the defense continued to play well, but the offense didn't let Saturday beat them twice. Now you have to stack days, though. You have to stack days. Today's got to be better. You've got to be better, all right, tomorrow night, for example, all right? I mean, they're going to go this afternoon, they're going to go tomorrow night, okay? You have to stack days. This is a pivotal week. The reason it's a pivotal week is, the reasons this is a pivotal week is, A, there's no classes this week. So it's football and football only. Lock in, get it done. Jobs to be won, position now. And it's not just, it's not just starting jobs to be won. It's playing time jobs to be won, right? So there's layers to this. And when this week is over with on Sunday night, and then the first day of class comes up, they're off on Monday, the first day of class. So when Sunday night is done, the coaches are going to go through meetings on Monday, and this is where they're going to sit down and say, okay, these are going to be, when we come back on Tuesday, the ones. These will be the twos. These will be the threes. And then at some point, maybe on Wednesday or whatever, this will be the scout team. Now, can you go from scout team to the travel team? Yes. Because it's not the end of it.
It's just the starting.
Right? It's just the starting point. It's not the end of it. Somebody can go on a scout team, and after a couple of weeks, everybody look around saying, he should be over here. And I've seen guys do that. Decisions have to be made at the end of this week, and then going into Tuesday, Wednesday next week, as not only who's on the scout team, but who is probably on track to be a red shirt, who is on track to play, who's on track to be on special teams. So that's why this week is always a pivotal week. You've been building to this week. Well, now this is the week where some separation has to happen for some people from somebody else, so that, okay, here are the ones, here are the twos, but a lot of the twos are going to play. All right, here are the threes. It's kind of like a borderline thing. And then who's going to be scout team? And who's going to redshirt? And who's going to be green lighted? Doesn't mean it can't change, because it can change. I've seen it change many times. And when it comes to even with green lighting, remember, you have a 4-game window now. The bowl game no longer counts. Okay, the bowl game no longer counts. So you've got 1/3 of the season where you can put guys in, and you can find out whether they can play or not, and whether you should keep playing them. So even guys that are a scout team could get into 2-3 games along the way, depending on what the score happens to be in the game, so they can get a look at some guys. Right? Because it used to be that it's 4 games, but that included the bowl games. So he's played 3, now he can play them. Now they're like, you know what? With guys opting to leave for the NFL and so forth, you need the roster spots, and so that's why they've loosened that part up. But that's where they are right now, and that's the polls are out.
So I was about to ask you about.
Tremendous amount of hype about Michigan.
Coming in number 2 in the AP top 25.
They have a really good quarterback. Is he a generational talent? No, but he's really good, though. He's the best quarterback that Jim has had at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And he can run, throw, he's got a lot of confidence. 2 terrific running backs. Corum's coming off a knee injury that kept him out of the Ohio State game and kept him out of the college football playoff. But he's really good. And everybody will tell you, Corum's one of those really good kids. When he got hurt last year against Illinois, he had put together something the week of, because the next week was Ohio State and it was Thanksgiving. And he had put together something where he was going to hand out turkeys to underprivileged families. Right? He got hurt against Illinois. He went out and still did it. It tells you a lot about him, right? Yeah, he has to do his deal, has to rehab and so forth, but he still cared enough to make sure he was there. He fulfilled not only his obligation, but everybody will tell you he did it with a smile. He's a good kid. Donovan Edwards, a terrific talent. This is where one of those times where Jack and I just hate being right. We went into the Michigan game last year, and we're doing the pregame show, and we said that the key player coming in was Donovan Edwards, and he ran wild. Thank you for nothing. Just you watch him, he's just, look, he can catch, he can run, he's got a lot of things, really good. And James he was talking to us a lot about Edwards, leading it about how good he thought he was, which probably influenced how we felt. Their offensive line was one of the better ones in the country last year. The difference is this year they have 3 transfers in there. And for all we know, they meshed together right away and everything, and it's no issue. But they're all older players.
Yeah.
They're veterans, been around the block. They all know how to play, and that helps. It's just there's still a cohesiveness. Good at tight end. Wide receivers okay. I don't think they have the pass rush that they had a year ago, or especially not 2 years ago. I like their linebackers a lot, especially Junior Colson. Harrell, 32, is off the edge. I like him. Secondary is good. And let's not lose sight of the fact that Jake Moody, who was such a valuable offensive component for them as a kicker, is in the NFL now. So they do have to replace him there. Now, as for the suspension,
I was going to ask about this because this is something that over the past few days especially has kind of, I guess, exploded is the best way to put it.
Okay, so what he's accused of is lying. All right. So Bruce Pearl was the head basketball coach at Tennessee. He's now currently the head coach at Auburn. In the recruitment of Aaron Kraft, who ended up going to Ohio State, they broke rules. And Pearl received a show cause penalty for 3 years. 3 years for lying. Now, it's a little more extensive than that. I believe the NCAA felt that he got a hold of the Crafts and wanted to make sure they were on the same page with the, quote, story, that he talked to his assistants and wanted to make sure they were on the same page with the story. Okay. I believe that's what he's accused of doing. He got 3 years. Jim Harbaugh is also accused of lying. But I don't think I've heard anything other that he talked or influenced anybody to do anything beyond that. Well, Bruce Pearl's getting 3 years show cause for lying. The heck with the 4 games. Harbaugh probably should get a year.
Well, that is the current rumor on the street because, of course, the Committee of Infractions is the one who rejected it from the NCAA. The 4-game deal, essentially, what Harbaugh was going to start the season as. We don't have a resolution for it yet. So there is...
Well, he'll coach the whole season.
He'll coach the whole season. So there is a discussion at hand that what it feels like to him, because there's been the rumor of him going to the NFL. He's shot that down for a while.
Sure.
What if he gets a year suspension at the end of the season and they say you're out for the next year and he says, bye,
well, he could.
and goes to the NFL? Wouldn't be the worst move, especially for him. He can't coach for a year in the college game. May as well go back to the NFL.
I mean,
it would make some sense.
I think Michigan thought they had it solved.
Definitely did.
With the 4-game suspension. And now, again, I don't know, what he says it's over a cheeseburger or something like that, right?
Yeah, over a cheeseburger is what he was saying. Which
okay, let me put it this way: you live in a naive world, a completely naive world, if you think it was over a cheeseburger or they just talked about the weather.
They just wanted to go get a nice burger, Steve. What's the problem with that?
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Hey, Big Ben came to State College. He wanted a good burger. He went to the field, I believe.
Yeah, no, you know why he's here? U.S. Kids tournament was over because I was over at the golf course that day. They said, the guy just in right before you was Ben Roethlisberger. I said, he's a little old to play, isn't he?
Yeah, he wants a burger. Steve, why can't Jim Harbaugh just have a chat and get a cheeseburger, huh?
Well, they could just go to a restaurant and talk about the weather.
Yeah. The weather's real nice.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Sure.
What did Steve Jones talk about today? Let's listen in.
The weather.
Normal stuff.
The weather.
Yeah. That's all we talk about.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. First of all, the NCAA is losing its teeth. It feels like every step of the way. They're fighting Texas A&M on the state of Texas law with NIL. They're not going to win it. Okay? They're not going to win it. They are trying to hang on to they've been denying a lot of appeals on transfers being playing right away.
A lot of them have been denied.
Yes, they've been doing that, fighting Texas. And Texas, they're actually fighting Texas A&M. Texas hasn't said much. They're fighting Texas A&M on the new Texas law about giving incentives for NIL. And now they have this. Now this is the most high-profile one because it does involve Jim Harbaugh. It does not involve the head coach at Central Michigan, which we would not be talking about if it were the head coach at Central Michigan. And by the way, these alleged infractions occurred during the COVID recruiting period. Okay.
Why are you dissing Jim McElwain, by the way?
Actually, I like Jim McElwain.
Yeah, but you just dissed him. You said Central Michigan head coach.
Yeah, but if Jim were, when Jim was the head coach of Florida, it would have made news.
Mm-hmm.
When Jim was the head coach at Colorado State, it would not have made news. As the head coach of Central Michigan, it would not make news.
Go Chippewas.
As the offensive coordinator at Alabama, it would have made news.
Yeah.
I mean,
go Chippewas, baby. Go Chippewas.
Okay. It's like, okay, there's kind of like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 levels to these things. So we'll see what they want. My guess is they want a year.
Oh, definitely.
That's my guess. My guess is they want to do a show cause for a year, not 4 games. That's why they're doing this. And look, he'll fight it. I could see that one ending up in court, right? Along with the Florida State. No. Okay, on the docket today, we have some robberies.
we have Jim Harbaugh suspension. And Florida State wants to leave.
We have more robberies, and we have Florida State. Let's get to the Harbaugh Florida State ones first.
Knock these out the park real quick. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you guys could just go in the lobby.
Florida State, you need to pay at least $300 million, and you can leave. Thank you.
Well, okay, today's the day they're all supposed to declare whether they're going to be there for the 2024 season. They're going to be there this season, no matter what.
Yeah.
But this is to declare for 2024.
Which is the year it explodes.
Right. So if today comes and goes and everybody's hunky-dory, then we know this year and next year they're all playing. But we'll get to this April 15th deal next year with the same kind of drama. So let's get just quickly to the financials. What are the financials of this? Number one, you have to pay a $120 million exit fee. All right. Not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are the grant of rights worth? Okay. Again, I keep going back to, if it were so easy, they'd have found it by now.
Mm-hmm.
They have been talking for 18 months about this. 18 months. Florida State's people have been chirping about this.
You know the craziest part?
They almost went to the Big 12 in 2010.
Yeah.
Florida State. Before this whole contract thing started. They almost went to the Big 12 then. They've always been, over the last few years, there's been a lot of discontent there. The last 18 months, they have been chirping about this. If there was a hole in the grant of rights, they'd have found it by now.
And you have said this repeatedly. It is not a big document.
No,
it's not.
It's just a few pages. It's 5 to 8 pages. It's not exactly okay. It's not exactly extensive. The Constitution's a little bit longer. Go to the National Archives. Okay, Magna Carta, Bill of Grant of Rights. Okay, didn't take long to read that Grant of Rights thing. So it's $120 million to get out, the exit fee for the ACC. Okay. So what are the grant of rights for Florida State worth over the 13 years to go in the contract?
10 plus years, baby.
All right. $500 million. $500 million.
So in total, we're expecting them to pay what, 630 if they're adding in the 128 exit fee?
So what they want to do is they would like to, if they were to leave, negotiate it down.
Yeah, no.
Right? And if I'm the ACC, I'm looking at them going, no.
The ACC's like, yeah, no, we would like that money, please. We would like that $600 million.
Well, no, the ACC is going to get the money because if Florida State were to say, that's it, we're out as of today, which I think this is still a 50-50 proposition, but it's still maybe now leaning more towards like not yet. Not yet. We'll take another year to look at the document. Okay, I've looked at line 22 72 times. I still can't see it.
Steve, did you see that period? It's slightly to the right. That might be our way in here.
That could be it. Found it.
It's slightly off center.
They've had 18 months. They can't find it. Like that tells you everything.
So there's no spelling mistakes. They didn't use the wrong your.
Exactly. So if Florida State were to say, leave, and we're going to pick a conference.
Big Ten.
Every time they played a home game, guess who would get the money?
I'm guessing that is 3 letters. It rhymes with ACC.
Yep. Now, when they play on the road, it's a different proposition. But every home game they play, okay, if they had no negotiated settlement, it would go to the ACC. Because there was some. This has been a story we've had a lot of people, like bloggers and tweeting out stuff, throwing darts into the wind. I heard from a source, like going, okay.
My source works the 5 guys next door, Steve. He's pretty knowledgeable guy.
Yeah. That ESPN actually owned the rights. That the ACC signed it over to them. No. They pay a rights fee to carry the games. The ACC has the rights. As I pointed out last week, the ACC network and the SEC network are both, quote, owned and operated by ESPN, but it's done in partnership with the SEC and the ACC, respectively. I think that's where people got confused about owned and operated, okay? The ACC, like the SEC, like the Big Ten, they own their rights, and then you give them money to carry the games. It doesn't go the other way around. Hey, great, could you carry our games here? You take a check. That's not how it works. The network gives you the money because you have your own rights. Right? Again, there's been very little common sense about these stories. Very little common sense. Right? There's just people like throwing darts into the wind. Right? I mean, for goodness sakes, some guy in Minnesota says got USC and UCLA to the Big Ten ahead of time. Okay, well, no offense, but the USC part of it, not UCLA, the USC part of it was openly talked about in this show a year before it happened, only because we knew they were disgruntled. I didn't know they'd come here, but I said they should come here, right? Not exactly an unknown disgruntlement. That's why I talk to Tony Knopp as often as I do, right? Because Tony is deeply connected out there with all these businesses, but he also is deeply connected at USC. Okay? Tony's daughter and Andy Enfield's daughter both play volleyball together. It's like, hey, come on. I mean, Tony is a donor and deeply connected at USC.
Steve, you're connecting dots that I don't think you should legally be allowed to connect, because how dare you, sir?
Right. Well, at least I talk about who my source is, right? And not only that, he's not the only source I've talked to.
So your source doesn't work at a car wash about a mile and a half away from the stadiums?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, the Big Ten tournament, I had a lot of conversations with different people about just like asking a couple of questions here and there that I know would be in the know. Okay. And, at least you get a general feel and lay for the land. Now, the Oregon-Washington thing, in the end, I thought it would eventually happen. I can understand the timing of it, but I knew everything was predicated on the Pac-12 TV deal. Everything was, no matter what. Everything was predicated on that. That ESPN, I knew, had offered the 30 a year ago. We've talked about that how many times?
2 dozen, 3 dozen by now.
That they were offered in September last year, $30 million per school.
And they said
no. Now, Kleofkoff was the one in charge of telling them no, because he wanted to take the deal. So let's he's not always the bad guy. It was the conference presidents that said no, go for more. Now, supposedly, I think they wanted 47. That was the number that was quoted to me, was 47. Stories now says it's 50. And ESPN looked at it and went,
no.
Right? And how many times have we said that Fox wasn't going to bid? Okay? Knew Fox wasn't going to bid. Okay? They went to NBC. Now the story is now 3 times. I thought it was just once, but 3 times going, hey, they were like, no, we're going to bid for the Big Ten. CBS was going Big Ten the entire time. But ESPN was going to do it for $30 million per school. Okay. Right? And that's without USC and UCLA. Mm-hmm. That's without them. Well, then he was then authorized to go back for 50. Okay. And ESPN went, but again, nobody could foresee that in 10, 11 months, how dramatically the media landscape changed.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's sitting there after, looking around saying, I can smell ice. Right? And they can't get a deal with anybody. Supposedly ESPN offered them, like, at one point, the last one was like $6 to $9 million per school just to carry a game or 2 a week. They weren't going to. Okay? But ESPN, which is one of the healthiest aspects of Disney, but again, they're a division of Disney. Well, as a division of Disney, you still have to play within the corporate structure rules. So they had to go through layoffs, high-profile layoffs.
And we've discussed them heavily here.
Right? And they also have parameters put on them as to what they bid. I mean, over the years, they bid for the Olympics. They have come up short. And they want, they kind of get into a general area as to, this is good business on their part. So I'm praising them as business people. They have not sat there and overbid for the Olympics. They made a couple of bids and they went, okay, didn't get their MLS. Okay, Apple ended up getting that, right? Well, now they go with it. Pac-12 goes with Apple, $23 million. Apple doesn't want a linear partner. They don't want a linear partner. And I'm going to talk to Tony about this later this week. And Tony's had a harrowing time. He was actually in Maui last week. But they're tough. They are tough negotiators, Apple. And they got them to go to 25, but as soon as everybody saw the numbers, that's when everybody jumped ship. They were not going to jump ship until they saw the numbers. Only Colorado was going to jump without seeing anything. They kind of sensed it was going bad because they were waiting too long. They said, the heck with this. We don't want to do this anymore, right? So now everybody's sitting there because guess what? Okay, going into this year, there were 10 absolute free agents in college sports. And those are the 10 teams in the remaining Pac-10. Because the grant of rights runs out August 1st next year. The TV contract runs out August 1st. Remember we were talking about Florida State, exit fee, grant of rights? 0 and 0. It's a clean transition for everybody when they leave.
That word free is a real cool word, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, in other words, you're UCLA. You're $104 million in debt right now. Right? You don't have to pay an exit fee to add to your debt. You don't have to pay anything on a negotiated grant of rights fee like USC, like Oklahoma and Texas had to get out of the last year. It ended up being $50 million per. You're already $104 million in debt. You needed it to be clean. USC, okay, they're a private school, so we don't know what their financials are, but it's clean for them. Oregon and Washington come in next year. It's clean for them. They're going to come in at an average of about $35 million per. And Fox, I guess, is the one, according to Gene Smith, signed off on it, right, to help cover it, which I said last week, you have to be able to cover this. How do you do it? So between that and cable fees, because there's 4.6 million households between Washington and Oregon. Now, how many of those are cable? I mean, even if it's, let's just use half as so it's 2.3 million households. Well, the Big Ten Network goes from 10 cents per household up to $1 because now in the footprint. So you're going to get an increase there, all right, which will help out some. I'm just using round numbers here. All right. But it's clean for them. Arizona State, Utah, okay? Same thing with Colorado, okay? It's going to be clean for them. They were the absolute free agents in all of this. And there have been a lot of foul balls in all this, but they could have had a deal last year. If they'd had a deal, there would have been no realignment, in my opinion, until the end of the decade. Now, if you're an ACC school, here's the issue. The Big Ten may have 2 more contract negotiations before you have 1. End of the decade, if it happens to be like a 5-year deal, they could have another one. They could have 2 more.
There's a countdown clock running now.
Before you have 1, they could have 2 more. How about that?
Terrifying.
Same thing with the Big 12. They could have 2 more. And then so nobody knows what's going to happen with Stanford and Cal and Washington State and Oregon State. And the odd thing is Oregon State's actually a really good football team this year. They're really good. Stanford has actually recruited well under Troy Taylor. They've had, right? Cal is just, somebody told me Cal was $400 million in debt.
Oh, hey.
Well, part of that's the stadium, because when the stadium was built, they had to do, because of where it's located, everything had to be done with earthquakes in mind. Right? And I've seen the stadium. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, it's very nice. But there's a lot, they have a lot of athletic department debt. Not a little, a lot.
Yeah. Oregon State, by the way, sitting 18th in the AP top 25.
They're good. They're good. I mean, that's, but this is, my gut tells me that Florida State and Clemson will let the day go by without doing anything. And that means they'll be a part of it till at least 2025.
A lot of questions. Not a lot of answers.
Well, but Florida State's always been the one that blows it. Like I said, they've always been the one that blows smoke. In 2010, they almost went to the Big 12. Right? They'd be there right now. So we got to get out of here. $31.7 million a year. We can't do this. Okay. The Big Ten contract is backloaded. The TV contract is backloaded. I mean, it gradually goes up, but like the big money's really at the end. That's where the big separation is going to happen, is at the end and in the next contract.
It's going to be huge.
Right? That's where the next one is going to be. It's the next, the end of the last 3 years of this contract leading into the next contract. That's where the ACC is going to get financially buried by the Big Ten.
The next is always better, Steve. You know what's cool? The next episode of this, it's going to be tomorrow. Again, same time, same place. We'll be here.
As Dick Girardi would say, for now we are gone.
We are gone. Thanks for tuning in to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production. Check back daily for all the latest